Sony cameras are celebrated for many things, but menu simplicity isn't necessarily one of them. Thankfully, they have blessed us with the custom buttons. And depending on the style of photography you do, they will come incredibly handy. This is especially important for street photography, where speed and responsiveness are essentials. The A7IV offers plenty of customizable buttons, so much so that once you've programmed them to suit your style, you rarely need to navigate the menu again. Firstly, we'll cover the custom buttons for stills. At the very top, we have the C2 button, which I've mapped to focus area. 80% of the time I use the expand spot, because it's easy to navigate with the joystick and excellent for focusing on details. The record button is mapped to Super 35 mode. This allows me to crop in when in need of extra reach. This is an absolute game changer, with prime lenses and challenging situations when moving it's not an option. The wheels are completely customizable as well. I have the rear dial right set to ISO. At the back, we have the AEL button, which is very useful if you shoot with one of the automatic modes. However, I always shoot in manual mode, so I remapped this button to aperture preview. While it doesn't have any particular effect, as no one really seems to know what it does, it clears the viewfinder from all the enabled function, giving me a very clean view of what I want to capture. You could argue that the display button does exactly the same thing. Yes, but this is more of a comfort spot for me. Much easier and faster to access with my thumb when I am in shooting position. The AF on button is set to switch between manual and autofocus. The C1 button is mapped to tracking on plus AF on. This function is incredibly handy when trying to readjust the composition, while keeping the subject in focus and by keeping the button pressed. And the C3 button is mapped to silent mode, useful when you are in places when you don't want to be noticed or you cannot make any noise, as these use the electric shutter instead of the mechanical one. Moving down, we have the wheel, and let's start with the center button. I have this mapped to focus magnifier, an incredible feature when shooting manual focus or single shooting. Once enabled, you can move the magnifier box around with the joystick, and if you press the center button again, you get a 5.5 times magnification. Press it one more time and you get an 11 times magnification. I can't stress enough how useful this is, not just for precise focusing, but also for spotting interesting points into the scenes. The left wheel button is mapped to face eye priority toggle. In crowded places, there are times when you want to focus on a specific subject, but the camera locks on the nearest person instead. Having this toggle ready to go can make a huge difference in ensuring that you don't miss the shot. The top wheel button is set to the default display options. Pressing this button cycles through display information, such as the histogram, level gauge, and more. I typically use these when setting up the tripod, just to make sure that I'm shooting straight. The right wheel button is customized to touch operation. This allows you to switch focus with the tap of a finger. The bottom wheel is set to drive mode. Here I can change the continuous shooting speed and also set the timer when taking long exposures. Another very useful customizable button comes in playback mode with focus frame display. To ensure my focus is on point, I mapped the C1 button in playback mode to activate this function. The yellow box shows where the camera actually focused. To map these, go to Menu, Playback option, focus frame display, and select On. Then, to enable it in playback mode as a toggle, go to Menu again, Briefcase, Custom Key Settings, select the button of your choice, and from the first menu select the number 6 Playback option. Focus frame display. I find myself using this function repeatedly, as it gives me the confidence that I've nailed the shot. And let's not forget the memory recall dial. I enjoy taking pictures of moving objects on slow shutter speed, but setting up the camera for these can be very time consuming. That's why I've customized one of the memory recall settings for slow shutter speed shots. Now, all I have to do is switch from manual focus to memory recall 1 and I'm ready to go. As for video, I've mapped the buttons in a slightly different way based on what I use the most. C2 button mapped to focus magnifier. Pressing it once enables 1-time magnification, and pressing it again increases to 4 times magnification. The record button is set to the default setting. AEL button mapped to white balance for quick and easy access. AF on button set to manual autofocus toggle. The C1 button customized to adjust autofocus transition speed. The C3 button assigned to toggle touch operation, as it's quick to access when the camera is mounted on a gimbal. Center wheel button mapped to switch focus area, allowing me to quickly change focus areas without losing track of the subject. Left wheel button set to focus map. If you haven't used this function before, you are definitely missing out. The top wheel is set to the default display options. Right wheel button set to Super 35 mode, enabling me to crop in when needed. And the bottom wheel button assigned to face high priority toggle. Again, Sony menus might seem intimidating for first-time users, but once you start understanding the different categories and how they are organized, they begin to make more sense. Customizing your buttons can completely transform your workflow. It doesn't matter if you're shooting photos or videos. By tailoring your camera to your specific needs, you can focus more on capturing the moments and less on navigating the menus.